So we just got some new and juicy details about what is probably Apple's most anticipated product of 2023, which has to be the new larger and improved 15-inch MacBook Air. So if you're in the market for a MacBook Air right now, unless you absolutely need it today or tomorrow, maybe hold off for a few months until this new iteration of the 15-inch MacBook Air releases, because A, at the very least, it's going to at least make the M2 MacBook Air a little bit cheaper, but then also give you an option of a new larger and more up-to-date 15-inch MacBook Air. But in this video, I want to talk about everything that we've learned so far and also what to expect from this new product. Let's get right into it. So originally, we had some rumors stating that Apple is going to release a new larger MacBook Air, a 15-inch version, in April of this year, which puts us at about a month to 45 days away from that anticipated release date. Now, that 15-inch MacBook Air was supposed to be identical in every single way to the M2, the 13-inch MacBook Air, except for the actual screen real estate and the footprint. So it was going to have the same M2 chip, the same body, the same chassis, the same type of screen tech, same keyboard, same layout, same everything else, same colorways, except for the fact that it is a larger computer. But following some news that we got from Bloomberg over the weekend, it looks like we're still going to get this new 15-inch MacBook Air this year, but probably a little bit later because Apple is planning to release it alongside the new M3 MacBook Air. So we should have a 13-inch and a 15-inch M3 MacBook Air in the second half of this year. Now, in my opinion, I think this makes a little bit more sense to wait for the M3 chip, depending on what they're going to do with it, for the 15-inch MacBook Air. Because if they release an M2 15-inch MacBook Air, because then Apple's going to have to make a decision on whether or not they want to upgrade some other internals of that M2 15-inch MacBook Air compared to the M2 13-inch MacBook Air. For instance, do they add Bluetooth 5.3 into there versus Bluetooth 5.0? Do they add Wi-Fi 6E compared to just Wi-Fi 6 on the 13-inch MacBook Air? Some of the things that they added to the Mac Mini with the M2 version of the Mac Mini, they might have needed to add to the M2 version of this larger 15-inch MacBook Air. And Apple probably doesn't want to do that because it's going to be an even harder decision for consumers to go from that 13-inch to the 15-inch MacBook Air, depending on what they want. And also, it's going to kind of mess with the price points of everything. And they probably just want to hold off, so it makes a little bit more sense just from a logistics standpoint and from an actual visual and psychological standpoint from the consumer side that a new M3 MacBook Air is going to come in that new 15-inch variant. So in terms of what to expect about this M3 new 15-inch MacBook Air, which by all means, I'm going to get this thing immediately. And it's one of the most anticipated products that Apple has been rumored to have coming out this year. Now, the only thing that I would rather get other than this 15-inch MacBook Air is a new larger 15-inch iPad Pro, but that doesn't seem to be in the cards for this year. But with this 15-inch MacBook Air, like I said, it's going to be the same exact chassis, the same footprint, the same design language that we got with the 13-inch MacBook Air. So think about the same colorways. We're still going to have that midnight black or midnight blue version that Apple brought over that is a fingerprint magnet, but it's still probably the coolest color Apple has released since the original black MacBook, which came in that matte black finish, which I absolutely loved. Now, this M3 chip is still rumored to have an 8-core CPU, but it probably will have some updated internals with a 10-core GPU or maybe even a 12-core GPU, just because it will be the new M3 chip. We're still not fully aware if Apple's going to be using a 3nm process for this new M3 chip, or if they're going to stick with the 5nm process and then kind of see what they can do moving forward with an M3 Pro or whatever the case may be after that. But also with this M3 MacBook Air, it will only have the M3 chip, so the standard baseline M3 chip. It won't have an M3 Pro or M3 Max or M3 Ultra that's going to be allowed to go in there, as opposed to the M2 Mac Mini, which was able to get an M2 Pro chip built into there. We should also expect some updated internals to some of the more needed things like Bluetooth 5.3, Wi-Fi 6E support. We're still going to have the MagSafe capability, still 2 Thunderbolt ports on the side and 1 headphone jack. But even though we're going to have a larger display, which means more pixels, which means more brightness, which means more screen real estate, which means more battery life being taken away, we're going to have a much larger footprint. And with the efficiencies that Apple has with that M3 chip, we should have a new battery champ when it comes to a laptop overall. Like, imagine how much bigger and how much more room they're going to be able to fit with a new battery pack in there. Even though they have to power a little bit more screen, this should be an absolute battery champ and could even last you maybe up to 24 to 30 hours on a single charge when it does fully release, especially on a brand new battery. And I think this is a perfect product for Apple to sell, and it's a great natural progression to move towards after that, because a lot of people went to the new 14-inch or 16-inch MacBook Pro purely because they wanted more screen real estate in a laptop form factor. But the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro, those are chunky computers, right? They're very thick, they're pretty heavy for what they are. Yes, they're extremely powerful, they can handle crazy workloads, and you're able to really use those if you're somebody that uses that top, 5% of CPU power in a laptop. But a lot of people, including myself, use their laptop for very minimal tasks, right? For emailing, YouTube, Slack messaging, iMessage, very low intensity tasks that don't require a lot of CPU or GPU power, but they want that bigger screen like the 14 and 16 inch MacBook Pros. So bringing a 15 inch form factor to the MacBook Air, keeping it extremely lightweight, keeping it kind of bare bones in terms of what the use cases are, maybe some light video editing in 4K or 2K or maybe 1080p, some light photo editing, but a lot of word processing, PowerPoint presentations, video chatting. This is for people that's on the go and they want something nimble, that's portable and can adapt to their situation, but still give you enough screen real estate where it's not uncomfortable to use more than 2 different applications at the same time. Because with the 13-inch MacBook Air, even though that display is gorgeous and beautiful, when you have 2, 3, 4 applications open at the same time, things get a little bit crammed, and that's why we use a secondary monitor behind me to kind of open that up a little bit more and give you some more screen real estate. So this is going to be a battery champ and a road warrior and just a portability beast overall. It's going to last you forever. It's going to fit in any bag. It's going to be lightweight. You're going to forget that it's in your actual backpack whenever you're traveling, and it's going to be there whenever you need it because it's so adaptable, easy to use, and again, portable at the end of the day. Now, in terms of what Apple's MacBook Air lineup is going to look like moving forward when this new M3 MacBook Air releases, it's going to be a little strange. Like, there's going to be a big question if Apple's going to keep around that M1 MacBook Air, because for the price, that M1 MacBook Air is probably the most complete computer that you can buy today. Yes, I've mentioned the Mac Mini a lot with that $599 price point with the M2 chip, but the MacBook Air is very similar in speed, performance, but you also get the trackpad, you get the keyboard, you get an actual screen built in, you get the portability factor, and all for $999 or $899 if you go through the education store, or even cheaper. Sometimes Amazon has them for $799 brand new. And again, that is an M1 powered MacBook Air, which is beautiful. And yes, it has the older design language, but even that design, that wedge-shaped design, is iconic, and it's still going to be, in my opinion, good enough from a fashion standpoint and from an aesthetic standpoint where you're not going to get too tired of it. So the $1,000 question is, will Apple keep that in the lineup? Will it lower the price of that? Will it keep the same price and then make the M3 MacBook Air like $1,400 and the M3 15-inch MacBook Air $1,600? I actually think Apple's going to keep the M1 Air in their lineup from anywhere from $800 to $1,000, and then they're going to drop the M2 Air and then only have the M3 13-inch MacBook Air and the M3 15-inch MacBook Air. So that is what the MacBook Air lineup is probably going to look like in probably September, October of this year. So think of a $1,000 MacBook Air, a $1,200 M3 MacBook Air, and then a $1,400 to $1,500 M3 MacBook Air in the 15-inch variant. And let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about that lineup? Is that something that you can see happening? Because we've seen Apple, especially in the iPhone lineup, keep older iPhones that still work well, like the iPhone XR, but then drop their like 13 Pro in lieu of a 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. And I know you're leaving some comments down below about what Apple's going to do about that new M2 MacBook Pro or the new one, which still has the old design language where the only thing they did was add an M2 chip instead of an M1 chip. I think Apple's just going to keep that in the lineup, probably put an M3 chip in there and give it as an offering to the people that just want a little bit more power than the M3 MacBook Air, because it does have that fan in there and a little bit of a thicker design. But outside of that, I don't know who that computer is for, but Apple is most likely going to keep that computer in the lineup. And the last thing I do want to bring up is anticipated release date of all this. So Apple in WWDC of 2022, so last year, they did announce the M2 MacBook Air, the 13-inch variant, and they did allow YouTubers, influencers, and press to go on site and play with those computers. And then they were released 2 weeks later to the entire public. So don't be surprised if Apple repeats this year. So maybe an announcement at WWDC in June of 2023 for a 15-inch M3 MacBook Air, and then a release date in the coming weeks or months for the actual public to purchase it and be able to use them. So that is my anticipation. So we're going to have the M1 MacBook Air, the M3 MacBook Pro, which has that same ugly design language, and then the M3 MacBook Air and the 15-inch M3 MacBook Air. And that is going to be Apple's, sub $1,500 lineup of computers. And then if you want even more oomph, then you're going to go with the M1 Pro or the M2 Pro MacBook Pro whenever those do release at that $2,000 to $2,500 to $6,000 price point. But leave some comments down below about what you think about this 15-inch M3 MacBook Air. Is this something that you would want to gravitate towards? Is it something that you're missing in your workflow? A thin and light laptop that's easy and portable to use, but gives you a little bit more screen real estate than the traditional 13.3-inch form factor or 13.6-inch, which is what Apple did with this year's MacBook Air. Let me know in the comment down below, and I'd love to discuss what everybody else thinks, because I'm somebody that wants that 15-inch MacBook Air just because I just want more screen real estate overall, but in the same form factor and that light and thinness factor, as opposed to getting a chunky, overpowered for my use case MacBook Pro. But that is going to do it for this video, everybody. If you did enjoy, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so that I know you made it to the end of the video. And if you guys want to watch some more macOS, iOS, or iPadOS videos, click on one of these right here. But all I know is that I'm extremely excited for Apple to do something with a new 15-inch MacBook Air and then maybe even a 15-inch iPad Pro. But that's going to do it, everybody. I'm Fernando. I'm out of here. Peace.